Hello everyone, Conrad here, and as you can see I'm on a boat on the blue open seas, which can only mean one thing. Today we're doing Hyrule's seas, shores and islands inside Breath of the Wild 2. Majestic seas, the salt water breeze in the hair, islands to sail to and enemy camps to raid. All of these were found in Breath of the Wild. And even though the eastern and southern edge of Hyrule was absolutely gorgeous with its dramatic cliffs and mountainous terrain rising up from the seas, something was off, or if you prefer unpolished, about this massive area of Hyrule's map. As a descendant of the Norwegian Vikings, I can tell this, since I've lived my entire life near a rocky saltwater fjord, an archipelago, and multiple times a year been out sailing, fishing and partying on boats. So as men of nearby sea, what do we think is wrong about the seas of Breath of the Wild? In one word, emptiness. And throughout this episode we'll go over what lacked and how Breath of the Wild 2 can expand and fill it out. But first be sure to leave a like and share these unique Breath of the Wild 2 videos so more people can see it. Subscribe and press that notification bell, and again for all notifications, as this is the only way to navigate through the storm that is the YouTube algorithm. Let's set off from the seaside paradise of Lorelin Village, which we in our Zonai obsession completely forgot to cover in the Farron episode as a crucial fishing village. This completely optional seaside paradise in Breath of the Wild will no doubt grow in prominence in the sequel, both from a story and gameplay perspective, with its own questline and perhaps even dungeon. After all, here we find Hyrule's best tropical paradise with romantic huts and palms, cheap shock arrows, a proper fishing harbour and sandy shores. Perfect for some romantic moments between Link and Zelda. Though something was different about Lorelin, as despite having all the other qualities of major settlements in Breath of the Wild, it didn't offer any armor sets for sale, and that is something that needs to change in Breath of the Wild 2. What function should this set have? You'll have to wait until a little later in this video for that answer, as this set could change the way we explore Hyrule drastically. In order to define the problem at hand, we have to leave the shores of Lorelin and mainline Hyrule on the raft, which was no doubt a callback to the original Legend of Zelda. It was even used in the 2.5D 8-bit prototype for developing the physics engine, though this time we had a massive Korok leaf to blow into the sail. Still, it felt like the raft was deliberately placed to not explore the waters of Hyrule too much, despite bodies of water taking up much of Hyrule's map. A key reason for this was lack of underwater exploration in Breath of the Wild, leaving little to do when jumping off the raft for a swim, which also was limited due to the stamina wheel. Now that we have reached the wide open sea, it is time to go over the existing 4 seas of Hyrule, beginning from the south and Farron Sea, where we find Lorelin, the only harbour settlement along this massive coastline. After passing Cape Sessia, we enter the Necluda Sea, where we find one of Breath of the Wild's greatest surprises, Eventide Island. Moving past Mapler Point, we have the Lanayru Sea with Lanayru Bay Archipelago and the 4 islands, Davdi, Knuckle, Ankle and Tingle, which leads us into the northeastern Akala Sea with its characteristic Wrist Peninsula and Lomé Labyrinth Island. Let's face it, in Breath of the Wild, with exception of Lomé Labyrinth Island and Eventide, the coastline and its nearby waters had little to offer but a few shrine quests and Koroks, plus being Hyrule's greatest and most obvious invisible boundary of the open air map. Limited and at times not even a sea. Like, look at this. I've barely left Coma's shoreline and I have already reached the edge of the map. You can't go further. Wow, what a great sea. Joking aside, the seas of Hyrule, with the exception of Eventide and Lomé Island, felt like a missed opportunity in Breath of the Wild. They were absolutely gorgeous, but lacked the bustle and life that seas, islands, bays and archipelagos can offer in real life. The same goes for marine wildlife and enemies, which we will soon get back to. But first, let's have a look at the places along Hyrule's coastline with the greatest potential. Beside Lorelin and Eventide, these are Lavera Beach, Martha's Landing, Hateno Bay, and Malin Bay next to Tarry Town. All of these have the potential to become smaller and bigger landmarks in the sequel and locations where we can replenish before continuing our sea voyages. Though in the case of Lorelin, as previously mentioned, we could see a dungeon questline leading to a dungeon in the depths of one of Hyrule's 4 seas. Eventide also needs new purpose now that we conquered the Robinson challenge in Breath of the Wild. Other than adding new purpose to existing locations, the sequel to Breath of the Wild might open up the seas and add new islands with one or multiple seaside dungeons. It is impossible to point specifically what new islands may contain, but personally I would love to see either a new or returning race to wait for us there. But first we need to get them, as the sequel should offer multiple means of transportation over the seas of Hyrule, other than the raft. Say, a small sailboat, and if we are following the technological theme, specifically with the Master Cycle Zero, say a motorboat or jet ski. Maybe we could rent some of the better ones like we did with the Sand Seals in Gerudo Town. Or even better, they could turn the will for better vessels into a proper multi-stage side quest. Starting with a rowboat, then getting a sailboat, and finally upgrading to a speedy motorboat with an engine and then an even bigger one that we can use to fish after bigger creatures of the sea and also for other purposes. By expanding the seas greatly with new islands, shores, archipelagos and skerries, you could turn boats into the new horses of the sequel, and as is tradition for boats, name them after registering one. So we got a solid boat that can bring us out to these potential new waters and islands. What should we find there? Sea Zoras and their settlement. Yes, I know, we already have Freshwater Zora and the Rito, but no other 3D Zelda game other than the Wind Waker and Majora's Mask had sea areas, until Breath of the Wild. And we desperately need something more than Hyrule's seas in the era of the wild. Just think of it, stretching the sea and adding new islands in these territories is the by far easiest way to expand the map of Hyrule from Breath of the Wild. Bring back the skill of sea navigation from the Wind Waker as we jump from island to island. That would be amazing and offer a truly fresh and new experience that will make us eager to explore this territory. Something that will be less tempting in the already existing provinces of Hyrule found in Breath of the Wild 2. Now then, let's talk about water-based enemies, as Breath of the Wild only had 2 of them in the water itself, Octorok and Lizalfos. Yes, there were a few Guardians, Bokoblins, Moblins and even a Hinox, but they're just found on Eventide Island and on the coastline, since they can't swim. Seriously, we had no true seaside enemies in Breath of the Wild. Just recycled ones from other freshwater areas. And this is the great opportunity of the sequel, dedicated marine enemies, similar to those we have seen in past Zelda games, and I've even taken the liberty to bring up some of the more possible selections from Majora's Mask, The Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. Different type of fish enemies, sea hats, shellblades, and maybe even warships if we see some pirating action in the seas of Hyrule, which I hope we would see because it would turn the area much more exciting. Perhaps they could also be a part of the main story, or at least some side quests, as that will add another layer to the sequel. Or maybe not. Sound off what you think in the comment section down below. One enemy we should see though is Gjorg. No, not that one, but the shark-like Gjorg from the Wind Waker. Anyway, the marine wildlife in Breath of the Wild did not exactly blow me away as a Norwegian, as the variety found in saltwater fish, crabs and seagulls was rather shallow. No swans like this one I met on the beach recently, no sea lions or seals, which is sad since we had sand seals in Breath of the Wild. And most of all, no sea turtles, dolphins or findles as they were called in Spirit Tracks, sharks, previously mentioned Gjorgs, orcas and whales. Unless you count the leviathans, but they are not alive and not found in the sea. Though we also need smaller marine life, like shrimps, lobsters, seashells, mussels, scallops, oysters, starfish and so on. Imagine all the new recipes that they could add and dishes Link and Zelda could cook up using these in the sequel. Speaking of seafood, there's Zelda team. Please give us a more inspiring way to fish than just swimming up or bombing them. And by that I mean, bring back the fishing rod, just like Toyfulu on Twitter so beautifully depicted in her fan art. Link in the description down below. At least for certain fish, it is okay that we still have fish that we can swim up to and easily catch. Though at the same time, we need bigger fish that require you to use a fishing rod and bait, and maybe even fishing boats. A dream inclusion in this regard would be the national fish of Japan, the legendary bluefin tuna, and other fish that are not that easy to catch. And we know that well from Link's Awakening, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask 3D, and Twilight Princess, which all had fishing minigames. Alright, we have covered activities that we can do on the deck of a raft or boat and swimming around the water surface. But the surface of the sea is, well, only the surface. As we all know, the wealth of the sea lies in its depths. Sadly, Breath of the Wild did not let us go under the sea, snorkeling, diving, and so on. Well, after Horizon Forbidden West did this in their reveal trailer and Animal Crossing New Horizons added this update, there is no way that we will not be able to explore this beauty underwater. The coral reefs in Lorellin's harbour need to be explored closer and given much more life. And the same goes for the ocean floor across Hyrule and in the deeper seas. But how will we be able to go under the water surface? Glad you asked, because it could be the set of Lorellin, which we started this video on. The underwater set, with a proper oxygen tank removing the fear of running out of stamina in a shorter span of time and allowing us to both swim, dive, explore and even fight underwater. Much like in GTA 5 where we had a submersible or Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag's diving bell. Say that Zelda stays on deck operating the thing while Link explores in the deep water searching for some valuable treasure, or at least fights underwater enemies like sirens that were found in The Witcher 3. The possibilities under the sea are massive and could offer completely new quests, gameplay sequences that could in a way work like the Sheikah shrines where you can solve them in the span of say 10 to 15 minutes while you sit on the bus or train on your way back from school or work. And that is why the sea needs to be expanded and added new purpose in Breath of the Wild 2. It needs to be grander, it needs to feel more alive, and most of all, it needs to surprise both new and returning players to the franchise. Just like Breath of the Wild did with the Eventide Island Shrine quest. And the best way to do that is by adding new harbours like next to Tarrytown, turn Lorellin into one of the most crucial locations in the game, add new quests along the coastline, give us more freedom and less limitations in the seas, and most of all, let us explore Hyrule's deep waters. Fittingly enough, Monster Maze, who also edited this video, has a dedicated video on underwater traversal in Breath of the Wild 2, so be sure to check it out in the end card. If you haven't already, then be sure to press that like button and share this video. Smash that subscribe button and then the notification bell twice, first for notifications and then for all notifications, to beat the YouTube algorithm. Don't worry, we upload 3 times a week so we don't spam. Also, we are in the process of updating our Patreon with new tiers, titles and rewards, so for now, wait a little bit and then return back to patreon.com/commonrealm when these have been added and then consider becoming a patron. Finally, since you're still here, be sure to check out one or both of these 2 awesome videos. We'll see you in the next upload.